After facing multiple delays and a jump to a new publisher, South Park The Stick of Truth has finally found itself in a state worthy of gamers' hands. When first hearing about the project being a joint effort between Obsidian Entertainment and South Park Digital Studios with heavy involvement from Matt Stone and Trey Parker, I really had a lot of confidence in the quality of this game. Matt and Trey only wanted to make the game if they could replicate the show's uniquely crappy-looking art style, and they did an incredible job with it in this game. While nailing the South Park look and feel was essential, the actual gameplay is just as important when it comes to a video game, and I believe Obsidian hit the bullseye with this unique and surprisingly deep RPG experience. In the game, you'll be playing as a new kid moving into South Park and finding yourself in a situation where you need to make some friends as encouraged by your parents. In the game, you'll never speak a word, and it occasionally humorously pokes fun at this common video game trope of a silent protagonist. The game's story picks up very quickly as you'll find yourself in a group of friends at Koopa Keep, also known as Cartman's Backyard, where you'll set off in your imaginary journey to retrieve the Stick of Truth from the elves. We learn that there is an ongoing rivalry between the humans and the elves in their imaginary fantasy game where each side fights to gain control of the Stick of Truth, since it gives control of the universe to its holder. The overall journey in the game is far from just an imaginary game for kids though, as you'll find the story taking several unexpected twists and turns that will leave players dealing with challenges that are far from make-believe. I felt a lot of inspiration from Earthbound throughout the game's beginning areas that had that same unique setting involving a kid leaving his house to explore and getting into fights with animals, people, and other strange foes around the town. Matt Stone and Trey Parker actually admitted to the game taking inspiration from the game as well, which makes perfect sense why I felt that way. Hardcore fans will appreciate just how much South Park content is actually packed into this game, as you'll see just about every South Park character you could imagine showing up in the game in some form. These cameo appearances can range from something as big as a boss encounter or quest NPC to something as small as a junk item you'll find in a drawer. It was very impressive just how many characters show up, and even more impressive thinking about all the work that must have went into the writing and voice acting in order to nail it comically. The writing in the game is spot on. As long as you're a fan of the show or have been a fan of South Park at some point, you'll find yourself chuckling a very generous handful of times throughout the quest. It is that unique, sometimes immature, and sometimes incredibly offensive style of humor that South Park has provided for the past nearly 17 years now. Due to the amount of offensive humor present, there is always the possibility that this could hamper the enjoyment for some players. If you don't like South Park or are easily offended, you probably won't be able to enjoy the game, which is unfortunate because it honestly does provide a great gameplay experience under the story and writing. I was really blown away by the in-depth RPG gameplay offered in The Stick of Truth. Early on, I came in thinking it would be a relatively light gameplay experience and the South Park art style and writing would be the only redeeming quality, but I was thankfully proven wrong. In proper modern RPG fashion, you will start your quest making a South Park kid character. There are plenty of appearance options here too in order to craft the character that is just right for you. While the basic setting kind of had that Earthbound feel, the gameplay is very reminiscent of the Paper Mario series and is seen both in the game's combat and exploration. The battle system is probably the game's shining star example of gameplay feature and is entertaining to play and even watch. While it is a turn-based battle system, each of the attacks and abilities involves some form of player interaction, whether it be mashing a button or timing the press of it for increased effects. Timed button presses can also be used to block enemy attacks for reduced damage, which has a satisfying feel when you pull it off perfectly. Combat is very in-depth when it comes to the variety of attacks and abilities. In your journey, you will find yourself learning many different types of these combat abilities. Depending on the class you choose, these will be different as well. To put these to strategic use, you'll be fighting foes with varying weaknesses and counter tactics, so you'll always be thinking about what the right move is to make for each battle turn. In the beginning, you will choose from one of 4 different classes, being Fighter, Mage, Thief, and a class made up by Cartman called the Jew. Each of these classes will provide you with unique skill trees, giving you a unique combat experience depending on your choice, which could help warrant multiple playthroughs to try out the other classes. Outside of your class's abilities, there are also the Final Fantasy-inspired summons, which involve the summoning of various South Park characters to perform devastating powerful attacks. The first one I earned I found to be extremely powerful to the point of being capable of taking out boss encounters even. I'm assuming the summons are meant to function as a tool for lesser skilled players to get past challenging fights. There is extensive progression and customization for this character you create beyond just the basic skill trees as well. There's also a perk system which allows you to pick a perk every time you hit a certain amount of friends milestone. You'll acquire friends typically just by talking to or meeting certain characters, and will be added to your in-game Facebook-style friend list. The perks you earn from this typically are passive effects such as increased HP, or maybe a boost to range damage, and it's completely up to you to choose which one you want. The deepest customization in the game definitely comes from the loot, however, and you'll find tons of gear, patches, and vanity items to customize the look and abilities of your character. Weapons and armor you find can have slots on them, and these slots you can apply patches in a similar fashion to World of Warcraft and Diablo's gem system. These patches provide extra passive boosts, which sometimes give you incredible capabilities, like healing every time you hit an enemy. As I mentioned, there are also vanity items, which are strictly for appearance, and you'll find just as many of these type of items as you'll find traditional gear. The vanity items allow you to add your own creative imagination to your character, adding items such as a wizard beard, or to your mage, or maybe something a bit more silly like the mud beard. Even more inspiration from Paper Mario is seen in the game's buddy system. You won't find yourself fighting alone very often, and you'll make buddies which will help you out in combat. The first and only buddy I'll mention to prevent spoilers is Butters, who will join you very early on in your quest. Each buddy will have their own unique set of combat abilities for you to try out, and you'll see some basic automatic progression happen as you level up. Each of these buddies has a special outside of combat buddy power too, which are used in key game moments to solve puzzles. As a paladin, Butters is capable of healing hurt characters you see in the world. It was fun making new buddies and just seeing what each and every one is capable of doing. While you'll be using your buddies to solve some of the game's puzzles, most of them are from the use of your own abilities. Early on, you'll get the bow, which you can use in the game world to shoot various objects, typically to knock something down. Later on, however, you'll gain some unexpected and very strange abilities that will be used for solving some basic puzzles and sometimes even require combined use of multiple abilities to solve. Many of these puzzles were genuinely clever, even if they weren't that complex, and provided a nice break from the traditional RPG gameplay. While the main quest might be somewhat short for an RPG, the game also provides a heavy dose of side quest content. While progressing to the main story, I received numerous side quests from various characters that involved humorous episode referencing tasks for me to do in South Park. One example was helping out Al Gore track down the infamous Man-Bear Pig. Those of you that do enjoy collectathons will appreciate the inclusion of the collectible Chin Pokemon hidden all over the game as well. Unfortunately, you cannot actually battle with them, though. I personally didn't feel let down in terms of the amount of content, as none of the content really felt lazy. It was all genuine, cleverly written South Park humor that you'd expect from the show. When you compare the amount of time the game offers and compare that with a 22-minute episode, it is insane to think about the time and effort that must have went into this game. The only gameplay faults I could possibly pull out was that there might be some balance issues with various armor and patch combinations, making combat a bit too easy if you use that. This of course could be solved by not using these cheesing methods, but seeing proper balance is always nice too. I have to admit I was guilty of using some very fun and overpowered combos of different abilities and gear at times, and I can see how some players may look down upon this kind of stuff. The game also provides you with an excess of healing items and money as long as you are willing to check drawers and chests as you progress through the game. Both of these things combined made the game perhaps a bit too easy, but there are difficulty options which can remedy this to an extent, making the combat more challenging. Any minor shortcomings with the gameplay were easily overlooked by me thanks to the fact that nearly every other aspect of the game was being a near-perfect replication of the South Park style. This is exactly how a South Park game should look. And in many of the game's sequences, you could easily fool someone into believing they were actually seeing an unaired episode of South Park that never saw life on television. Matt Stone and Trey Parker were definitely serious when they said they were only going to do the game if they could keep the same look as the show, because it replicates the crappy but unique animation style of South Park perfectly. Whether you're watching a cutscene, adventuring around town, or fighting in combat, it always retains that unique animation style. Despite this simple art style, there's still a lot of small appreciated details, such as the damage enemies taking actually causing physical appearance changes. My personal favorite was the burning effect, setting characters' hairs on fire as they freak out trying to put it out. The sound of the game is awesome essentially for the same reason as the graphics, as it once again has nailed it in making it not only look like South Park, but sound like it as well. Matt Stone and Trey Parker are here voicing all your favorite characters, and there are plenty of immature yet hilarious sound effects to accompany many of the silly actions and attack moves in the game. The music of the game I surprisingly enjoyed as well, with some epic and adventurous tunes to accompany the South Park themed adventure. At times you'll hear this awesome and humorous adventure theme playing in the town that features some choir chants from what sounded like Cartman. It felt very fitting for the theme of the game, covering elements of epic adventure and comedy at the same time. It was also a neat touch to have the short South Park start of a scene guitar tune play every time I loaded up my save file. South Park: The Stick of Truth is easily one of the best games I've played that is based on licensed material such as a television show or a movie. Even if that isn't saying that much, it still is one of the more enjoyable video game experiences I've had in quite a long while. If you're a fan of South Park, you'll be beyond pleased with how well they replicated the style of the show in the game, and even further impressed with the in-depth and fun gameplay provided in the experience. If you don't like South Park for any reason, whether it's just not your style of comedy or you just don't really care for the offensive humor, then this unfortunately will not be the game for you. I personally enjoyed the game myself, and I consider myself an occasional watcher of the show. I found the game to provide just as many laughs as the show, in fact probably many more considering its length. I also love the Paper Mario inspired gameplay as well, because I love the mixed in puzzle solving as well as the unique battle system, which is ages more fun to me than a traditional turn-based RPG battle system. I look forward to seeing what else comes after the Stick of Truth, whether it be a new DLC or a whole new game altogether. Until then, I highly recommend picking up South Park: The Stick of Truth if you're a fan of the show, as you won't be disappointed, even if it does come with that $60 price tag. The Game Cavern gives South Park: The Stick of Truth a 4.5 out of 5.